everybody, welcome back to Hunt Creative. Today we're going to make some vertical Warren pillars or stalagmites using dollar store solo shot glasses. Here you can see me hot gluing a couple together to make a 3 or 4 inch tall pillar that's hollow inside, and that's going to allow us to cut an opening for the Warrens. I imagine these as being the kill zone used by goblins or kobolds or what have you underground, where the little guys need a safe place to live. As we put these together, you can see that we're making kind of a modular setup that we can modify for different purposes. Here I'm covering the solo cups with a mixture of Mod Podge and black paint. Thank you, Jeremy, from Black Magic Craft. This helps cut down on the slipperiness of the solo cups. They're a little bit glossy and the paint doesn't like to stick to them very well. But once the Mod Podge dries, it gives us kind of a primed surface for which we can paint. I'm just slapping it on here, all over. Not doing the insides just yet because I've got plans to modify these after this dries. If you like these videos, please feel free to subscribe and share. And if you're interested in supporting this channel, I do have a Patreon page and the link is in the description below. Any donations help me add to my collection of craft materials and supplies and continue to build more videos for your pleasure. No pressure. Here I'm just using an electric drill to drill a little hole to start my cuts right at the bottom of the upper solo glass. And then I'm going to use a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut a rough warren shape or cavern shape opening in there so that the goblins have a place to take shelter. Grab some cover, hang out with their buddies, drink some beverages, chew on mushrooms, you know, the usual stuff that cavern dwellers do when they're not being attacked by intrepid adventure parties. I'm just taking my time and cutting them out to a rough shape. They don't have to be exact and they don't have to be uniform. They just have to look okay once they're all coated and painted up. Do one more and then we'll be ready for the next step. There we go. Now I'm going to coat the inside and tops of the bottom glasses with this black Mod Podge and touch up any chips that occurred. Not too exacting and not too concerned about full coverage because I'm going to be painting them and texturing them in the future as well. But this does help with the rigidity of the pieces. These solo cups are quite thin and any extra rigidity is a bonus and helpful. I'm going to glue them to some chipboard bases that I cut out into organic rough shapes. Nothing too major here, just wanted to make sure that the bases were a little bit bigger than the bottom of the solo cup stack. And I'm going to add tops to them, and these tops are a little bit bigger than the bottoms, and that's going to give me a little bit of overhang for added features in the future. I got this chipboard from the back of a pad of paper. None of the pads of paper in my house have this chipboard on the back anymore, so anyone writing on them is going to have to find a table or a book to lay them on. Sacrifice to the crafting muses. And here I'm using a Y-lock and DM Scotty technique, and I'm just drizzling hot glue trails all over the outside of these solo cups. This is going to give them a rocky-like texture when I paint them, and it's going to disguise that very solo cup profile that they have with the various grooves and ridges in the side of the cup. I used about $3 store hot glue sticks for this. hard to see on the black background, but it really looks great when we start to paint them. Just continuing on to cover all three of them. Takes a few minutes. Good time to fire on some music or some favorite movies or listen to podcasts or audiobooks or stream your favorite YouTube channels, whatever turns your crank while you're crafting. Stream through the backlog of Hunt Creative videos if you like. We've got several out there. Just finish up this part of this one. And I'm just making sure that that texture comes up onto the bottom lip of the top of each pillar. I'm going to cover the paper top with black paint and some aquarium gravel later, so I'm not worried about that. And off camera, once this is done, I'm also going to glue on some chipboard ledges that protrude from the warren openings in the sides, just to give a little more spot, a few more places for minis to stand, and some opportunities to add some catwalks and bridges. One more to go, and we're on to the next step. A few little touch-ups just to make sure. Can't see it really well here, but I'm adding a hot glue support down the center of this wider opening for a little extra stability. I found the top a little bit wobbly. That's why I'm tapping on the top of it. There you can see a little bit of it there. And a few more touch-ups just to make sure there's no raw plastic edges showing. Now I've painted the tops black, and now I'm going to hit them with some craft glue and coat them with the aquarium gravel that I talked about earlier. Just dunk them in my bucket of gravel. And add a little extra to fill in any spots that didn't take. And set it aside to dry. And you can see the cardstock platform I added there. Now here I'm just going to sponge paint on, and I'm going with a two-tone color. I started with gray here, and then off camera I did a slightly lighter sponge coat with kind of a coffee and cream color. It's called Fawn. This two-tone look gives it a little more verisimilitude. It looks a little more natural with more than one tone on the pillar itself. A little more naturally rocky. And there's a little bit of brown and tan colored in my fish tank gravel. Now I'm going to add fish tank gravel around the bases of these pillars and up to the underside of the cardstock lips that I attached, just to add a little extra mass and make them a little more stable on the tabletop. Just coating it with some glue here and dunking it into my bucket of gravel. third one done, and then I'll do a few touch-ups leading up to the underside of the ledges that I attached. A little more glue, more daubing, a little more gravel, and one more to go. Now you can see that hot glue support that I added in on this one now. And just a few touch-ups. And once this all dried, I hit them all with a coat of matte Mod Podge to protect them. And then here I'm assembling some catwalks out of some coffee stir sticks. So what I did is I split them down the middle in kind of a rough cut. And I cut a whole bunch of 1-inch pieces to be the lateral support pieces that the goblins or kobolds will walk on. Always trying to cut away from my hand when I'm splitting them down the middle. Safety first. I clip off the rounded ends of one end because I don't really want those. Nothing screams stir stick like that rounded popsicle end. And here I'm taking 4 and I'm lining them up nicely with the grid on my cutting mat with using an extra popsicle stick as kind of a guide. And I'll mark out 1-inch pieces. And using an angle snip, I'm just going to chop all these up. I'll put the non-rounded pieces in a pile to use for cross steps, and I'll set the rounded ends aside. It takes a few minutes to get these all cut, but it's worth it in the end. And I made several more of these off camera. I'm just showing you these two as an example of what you can do. You could use this to make farmers' fences. You could make this to make ladders going to different levels of a barn or a similar structure. You could do neater cuts with a little more careful alignment and make all kinds of interesting fence rails and fence pieces and that sort of thing. I think I might actually come back to this technique and make some pasture fences in the near future. Put a couple of these fence rails between a couple of faux stone pillars. Make them modular so that they go together in different combinations. So here I'm just adding a bead of craft glue down all of my long support pieces. These are the joists upon which the treads will sit. Once I get that glue on there, I'm just going to add the little 1-inch pieces as my treads. I'll start with the ends of the walkways and then I'll fill in the middle with the rest. And because I imagine that kobolds and goblins are not what I'd call master craftsmen, I'm doing them in kind of a haphazard, goblin-y, orky sort of structure with random gaps and angles, but I want to make sure that they're close enough together that a mini can stand on them pretty easily. We'll just line them all up. It looks like I have a few too few for the second piece, but that's okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to go back to my shorter bits, clip off the rounded ends, and add them in as well. And because they're slightly different sizes, this is going to add to the ramshackle, goblin-y, koboldy look. Use a pencil to just nudge them into the place where I want them. Add a couple extra dots of glue where it's a little less coated than I want it. There's my head and my glasses. There I get a couple of walkways. Once they're dry, I'm going to paint them up in a wood-like color. I'm just laying out some other dollar store shot glasses to keep them up off of my cutting mat, my dirty, dirty cutting mat that needs a cleaning badly. And this is my coffee bean color craft paint, just acrylic craft paint that I got at the dollar store. It's a larger jar, so it was a couple of bucks, but it seems like I'm using this paint a lot to gesture towards woods and wood tones, so pretty good investment. Dollar store craft brush, one of my favorites. Seen about a year of use on this one so far, and it's great for slapping in the base coats and doing some dry brushing. It also is showing a little bit of wear and tear from the dirt and use that it's seen, but it's still doing a good job, so I'm going to keep it around. I just base these up pretty carefully with this coffee bean color, covering all sides and ends. Looking good. Feeling happy. And once these are dry, I'm going to come back in and give them a dry brush with a medium gray color to kind of simulate weathering and dried out wood or whatever these are made out of. They could be mushroom stems that are hacked up and assembled. And I'm just doing the top. I'm not too worried about the bottom. And I'll coat those with matte finish Mod Podge as well. And here you can see the finished product. 3 warring pillars, a bunch of catwalks, 1 half-size pillar, which is just a single solo cut by itself, some mushroom scatter from a previous video, and some DM Scotty paper mache stalagmites stacked on top of these just to give them a little more verticality. Party of heroes standing on the verge, almost in a position to be ambushed by all these goblins, hucking stuff down at them. You know, huck nets and torches, shoot arrows, spears, what have you. And I've got a whole bunch of greenskins just posed on here to show off the craft, as you will. Join us in 2 weeks when we're going to step outside the Grim Grotto and make some modular docks or wharfs. Hope to see you then. Thanks for joining me.